There was this curriculum put together by a work group that included Black people and Latino people. There were 191 points made. Exactly one of them was one sentence saying that slaves sometimes learned skills during their enslavement, which helped them. Just one thing out of 191. Now, Kamala Harris, I don't want to join the dog pile on her. She's a very busy person. I'm sure that some aide told her that the curriculum said that, and that neither she nor the aide probably bothered to take a look at the document. I cannot believe that Kamala Harris really knew that it was one sentence and then got up and made it sound like that point was like one of three or something like that. And I think a lot of people really were not bothering to look at the whole document. Even if you just have a sense that there were, say, 12 things, and that was one of them, why dogpile on that one sentence as a characterization of the whole document as being in some kind of denial about slavery, as if we're at a point in 2023 where a critical mass of people genuinely want you to think that the slaves were happy? Why fight yesterday's battles? Why pretend that it's 1939 when progress does happen? And more to the point, it seems like it was about 10 minutes ago that a certain kind of race man was trying to show that slaves actually managed to thrive, often in creative ways, despite slavery. So there was the grand old argument about the resilience of families despite being split apart, that it was an adaptation to slavery, that Black family structures often involve people who were not necessarily biological kin, that Black people could get along without being married because they so often supposedly had to during slavery, which in fact is not especially true, but that's what a lot of people thought in the 1960s and 70s. So the idea was to show that we made the best of the very, very worst. And that sort of thing would have included saying that many slaves learned skills. There were house slaves, there were field slaves, there were artisanal slaves. Many slaves did things other than pick plants. And after slavery was over, you could benefit from those things. And all of a sudden, you're not supposed to say this. If you had to choose between being somebody out picking the cotton and being the person who makes everybody's shoes and shoes the horses, you'd probably choose the second thing. That doesn't mean that your life was anything like perfect or even fair, but I would call that a benefit if you were doing that. But no, you're not supposed to say that now. It's the perfect example of where we are in our times, that we have to actually dehumanify slaves. We have to pretend that all it was grinding oppression by evil white people, and that there's no room for resilience or coping or anything like it. And we must convey that message. That's the message that we have to convey because, and you know what? Because what? It's like we're doing it for somebody. It's like we think somebody's watching. It's like there's some sort of God. We have to strike this pose and pretend that a slave couldn't do anything that might make life a little bit better for them. All of this is kabuki. It's play acting. One line. And wouldn't you know, that one line was created by one of the Black members of the panel. He's a card-carrying Republican Black conservative, and he wanted to show that even under slavery, Black people managed to cope as best as they could. That makes him a bad man? I say no. So that's why I wrote
You're referring to William Allen,
yeah,
who was one member of the commission that came up with this curriculum guideline. I mean, I'm not going to be as kind to Vice President Kamala Harris. I thought it was sheer demagoguery. I thought, you say you don't believe that she knew. I beg to differ. I believe that she knew full well exactly what she was doing. There's a line showing that DeSantis wants Black kids to be taught in Florida that slavery made Black people better off. The line did no such thing. It observed that, as you just noted, some enslaved people acquired skills, and it went on to observe that those skills could redound to the personal benefit of those enslaved persons. That's true. That just happens to be true as a matter of historical fact. The question of how much emphasis you put on that is fair. It's a fair question. Is that the only thing you're going to say about slavery? No, of course not. But the curriculum doesn't put it as the only thing it's one amongst scores upon scores of observations that could be made. So I think...
And the scores are the normal things. The whole document reads like something that, Du Bois or Kwesi Mfume or anybody would have written.
As you put it, the document is so effective in communicating the horrors of slavery that you're surprised Ron DeSantis would endorse it. That's John McWhorter, not me. I think that's a cheap shot, but never mind.
Sorry.
This history has to be a weapon and can't just be an exploration of the objective record. It's like you can't observe that the interests of the owners of enslaved persons were complicated. Their interests included the preservation of the productivity of the people who they depended upon to provide labor. So, for example, the diet of the enslaved persons would, to some degree, be influenced by the calculation that the slave owner would make about the future value of her asset as a function of how many calories people got to eat. To say that slavery was unrelenting horror of physical abuse overlooks the observation that unrelenting physical abuse of the livestock of the planter would also be not in his interest.
And yet, if we say this, we are sanctioning slavery. It's this either or kind of thought that we're encouraged
but we're not
to indulge. And we're not, and everybody knows it. But to even say this, we have to make sure everybody knows that slavery was an evil thing. Why are we fighting that battle? And you know what, Glenn? If there are a few people hiding under a few rocks who really do still think that slaves were singing happily out in the fields, well, the world will keep spinning. Don't we have more important things to think about than that? All of this play acting, it makes no sense. And it perplexes me, I don't know, Kamala Harris, to see somebody in that position indulging in that kind of nonsense. People should just do better.